Anybody wants to ask a question? Yes, at the very end, right there. Microphone to your left.
Thank you, very interesting presentation. Reading a magazine or a newspaper is more about a habit. What are your thoughts, and a question to everyone in the panel, what are your thoughts around how the future generations, our kids, will embrace the habit of reading printed media, or even subscribing to a newspaper or a magazine?
Right, Eva, over to you, because I'm sure you've looked
well, I have
in
to
detail.
I have to tell you something. I don't know. I mean, I think that everybody makes suppositions of what the future is going to look like and how our grandchildren are going to behave. I mean, I can see it in general. If I think about something very basic, my niece and nephew, that they manipulate those things like there's no tomorrow. The other day, my niece said, "Tia Eva, I have a surprise for you." And I was like, "What?" "I've created this magazine." She created okay, she might be influenced by a family that's into magazines. I kind of accept that. But she's not alone in her school when she creates these booklets like magazines. You know, I think that we cannot imagine how the future will be. I mean, if I think of Mexico and Latin America, our print business is doing very well. Our circulation is still there. It has not been affected by digital. If I think about the children, well, I don't know what they are going to be thinking. Maybe they want to go back to the future. Maybe they get bored with technology. And I think nobody has a crystal ball to determine how the future is going to be.
I think there's a couple of things in that question. One is there is a huge value in the finishability, which you talked about. You know, no one's ever asked The Economist to be longer. And you can finish a copy of The Economist. You can't finish the internet. So I think there's a value in packaging, number one. I think the real challenge, though, for the media industry, for us, is the physical reminder of a subscription that lands in your mailbox and creates guilt and piles up that you've written a check for. How do you replicate that value with digital? So I think there's a question in terms of, does the subscription as a concept continue without a print reminder? So I think that's the thing. But I think we've got time. I think my kids who are early teenagers still get magazines as a concept, but I do think it's a much longer term question of, do magazines, do subscriptions as a concept continue? I think if you can create the value of the packaging, it will. And I think that's the real challenge.
Gabriel.
I think definitely reading a printed product is a question of habit that will be lost sometime in the native digital generations, and what we do have to do is create some value for them to encourage to have, once again, the habit of reading you in another media. So the challenge is in there. I think that Paul's image of the film is exactly what happens. I have a 7-year-old kid, and he doesn't know what a video rental place is, and his habit is to rent it from iTunes. So basically what we should do is try to construct an iTunes for the 7 years old.
Yeah. My insight is what I said before: frequency for newspapers will change. We believe that it is going to become a reading experience of the weekend, which will compete with magazines. But I repeat and I insist on this: the printed product is eternal, and it will continue to exist. And all these elements about young people not reading, I'll just give you a few statistics. 11 books, 2,500 pages, read by 20 million children in the world. In print, Harry Potter. Another question? Anybody else?
The bar waits.
Yeah.
Paul, let me put to you, because just ever so quickly, you had a very interesting insight saying that you believe that people will engage with advertising in iPads and apps better than with print. What evidence do you have to that?
I mean, there's very little statistical evidence at this point other than anecdotal, but when you look at some of the data that I put up that says people are clicking and engaging, the issue is that the advertising market hasn't moved that fast. So in fact, the vast majority of media companies are taking print ads and sticking them in the digital replica. I think that's a dangerous strategy for the simple reason that they're doing it to hold on to the print rate base. And as readers migrate, your print rate base is going to be harder to maintain, and you will have created no value in digital as a standalone product. So I think there's this danger that we're resisting the forces to digital by not putting out a good digital advertising product. When you do that, customers do, we've got some great ads on the app where you shake, there's an Avis ad running at the moment, you shake it and the car changes. There's things that you can book an Avis, you can book a car from the app. That's the very beginning of what's possible with this stuff. And I think that we need to, as an industry, help marketers with that shift, but also stop hanging on to print rate bases. And I think your point about there's always a future for print, I agree. I think the challenge is it'll become uneconomic at the current pricing, I agree, of course, yeah. But it'll become uneconomic. We are geared up to print millions of magazines every week. When that drops to tens of thousands, I think we have a problem.
Right, Eva, do you have any evidence that in your apps, which are very rich experiences, indeed people engage more with the ads, they click through, the lead generation aspect of it is happening, the e-commerce aspect of it is happening?
Well, I think in Latin America, because I think that we're talking different things. In Latin America, we're still not having the reaction from people that say, what is the enhanced replica coming from our GQ? I mean, there's not that excitement yet from the consumers themselves. I mean, we still have to work a lot on that's why I go back to treating the consumers or understanding your consumers. In Mexico, for example, for luxury, I'm talking luxury, I'm not talking anything else but that. You still have to understand the consumer, which is the real AB, which is not the one that you're used to in Europe. So that consumer is new money, is the new middle class, is emerging, and we still have to teach that consumer the value of the fragrance, of the name, of the brands. And now we're going to put them into digital, and then we're going to give them the enhanced replicas, and then the tablets. Latin America, which I think this conference is all about, is still not prepared, and we cannot copy-paste what is being done in other markets. And maybe the US is moving forward. Well, that's great. But we cannot say that what happens in one place is going to happen eventually in another one, especially with luxury.
Right, Gabriel, you said something very, very interesting, saying that ads in the homepage for newspapers or news sites really do not work. Where is the money in advertising in news sites? Is it display ads? Is it pre-roll in video? What works?
I mean, when I said they do not work the same way they do work in transactional sites, in the sense that probably people would not click on them. I think that they do work if you're able to display a good message with good creativity, which seldom happens because agencies don't help you that much. To Paul's point, we need to develop something different than a banner, static banner. And I think that they do work a lot when combined with a brand of newspaper, because at the end of the day, I do believe that the medium is part of the message. So I think that definitely we need more intrusive, engaging advertising related to your brand that will create branding, and we need a measure of that branding effect, because if we are not able to measure it, probably it won't exist.
Yeah, but what works? What works best? As a message to advertisers, what have you found? I'm sure you measure the effectiveness of ads within all the content that you have.
Basically what works best is rich media, intrusive. I mean, you get in between the content and the people for, of course, a few seconds or whatever, and that's what works for us. Actually, right now, Lanacion.digital sells about 75% of its revenue in rich media formats, and that's basically what we believe that works according to our advertisers' testimony.
Right, we'll close with that question over there, ever so quickly.
Yes, I have a question for Paul Rossi. With the new audience through the tablets, would the Economist consider deliver the content in local language, especially for Latin America, where maybe English is could be a hurdle?
I think the Economist English is a hurdle everywhere, actually, sometimes. I think the short answer is it becomes more possible for us. We have a somewhat colonial British view of languages, which is to speak slowly and shout. So I apologise that the Economist has no other language edition at the moment. Clearly in print, that's a big investment in terms of print plants and everything else for a version in a different language. I think with digital it gets a lot easier. So one of the things we will look at is how we can launch with digital into Portuguese or Spanish for Latin America, because the economics of it are far, far more compelling than in print. So I'm not saying we will, but it's something certainly we are looking at.
Right, on that note, Paul Rossi, Gabriel Dantur, Eva Hughes, thank you very much, and thank you all. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9:15. Thank you.